What, were you guys expecting some speed-related joke? Well, it's too bad. You've become wise to all my tricks. So, if you were hoping for something witty in this portion, you've got it backwards. Let's start the video. I did say you had it backwards.
Oh, you stink!
Tragic events in history. Sonic's death. When jumping out of a plane, he forgot his parachute and f***ing
Yeah, alright team, I just want to congratulate you guys on a job well done. Yeah, Disney beat us financially, but we're considered the champions of the people, which is what really matters. That's great and all, Jerry, but where's the boss? Well, you see, that's the thing. I was kind of worried about the movie releasing in 2027, so the boss had me look up all the films coming out that year on IMDb, and what is this? I mean, you're the one who asked to see the IMDb. Does it still count as soon if I release it within the year? Yeah, you know what? Whatever. This is the Eliminator speaking, and I can safely say, without a shadow of a doubt,
Boo this man!
that I liked Sonic 3, despite filming during a writer's strike and an actor's strike, and releasing at the same time as the prequel to one of Disney's biggest financial successes, back when it meant something. This thing somehow managed to be the best movie in the Sonic trilogy. And today, we're going to be talking about it. And what better time to do that than on the 1-year anniversary of the movie's release? So, with that said, let's begin. Alrighty, let's take a look at the story for Sonic 3. As always, spoilers for the movie, so if you haven't seen it yet, please go and watch it. But if you're at this point, you probably have, or you just don't care. So, let's begin. In Sonic the Hedgehog 3, a mysterious black hedgehog named Shadow escapes from captivity and is hell-bent on wreaking havoc across the world. Wanting to stop him before he causes too much trouble, Gun enlists the help of Sonic and his friends in order to contain the threat. However, after various hijinks and a failed alliance with Dr. Robotnik, Sonic and the others discover that Shadow is working under Robotnik's grandfather, Gerald, who is plotting to destroy the world using a weapon known as the Eclipse Cannon, and has been manipulating Shadow through the trauma he suffered at the hands of the aforementioned organization, as they were the ones who sealed him away. Now it's up to Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles to defeat this new threat and save the world. Now, I definitely have a bit I want to say about the story, but I feel like you can't do that without talking about the characters first. So, let's get to that, starting with the humans. Compared to the first two films, I don't have as much to say about the human characters. Like the past two movies, Tom serves as a moral compass for Sonic, and in turn serves as an explanation to the viewer as to what the moral of the story is going to be this time. Maddie also kinda has a similar issue, but compared to the first and second movies, it's not really much of a difference. Though she and Tom do get to help Sonic and the others break into Gun headquarters in the middle of the movie, and Tom definitely gets a bit more after that point, though that's more for Sonic's character. But we get there when we get there. Wade is basically just a cameo in this one, which I'd reckon is a result of him being the Knuckles series. But I wouldn't say it's a total loss since he doesn't really add too much to the movies in the first place. The opposite can be said for Commander Walters, who was pretty much a plot device, like he was in the previous movies. In this case, he serves to give explanation to what's happening for Sonic and the others, before a series of events leads to the military hunting them down once again. This time, led by Commander Rockwell, who really isn't much of a character. She's basically there to spearhead the whole hunt since Walters gets taken out of the fray. Fun little side tangent, I remember when the actress was cast and everyone thought that she was going to voice Amy or Rouge. But getting back on track, after that we have Agent Stone, and honestly I don't know what to say that hasn't already been said. He's pretty much one of the best things about the movies aside from like Robotnik himself, and I like how he's actually a part of the whole plot this time instead of just being the guy in the chair, though even then what he does is pretty minimal. But with all that said, we've pretty much covered all the human/original characters in these movies. So, onto the ones we came for. Alrighty, from here we'll really be getting into spoilers, so you you've been warned. Now, starting things off, we have Knuckles, who I really don't have as much to say about, compared to the second movie at least. See, now that Knuckles is on the good guy's side, there isn't really much he does that's independent of Sonic and Tails. So he doesn't really have any character moments for me to talk about. I mean, there are two, but those are more for Sonic's character than anything. I'm purposefully saving those for later. I mean, admittedly, it's better than Tails, who gets basically nothing. I mean, Tails wasn't that great in the second movie, but here it definitely feels like they really pushed him aside. Again, like Tom and Maddie, he helps Sonic and the others break into Gun headquarters partway through, but again, that's not really too different from Tails' previous role. And neither him nor Knuckles really has an arc. Thankfully though, the rest of the characters I'll be talking about have a lot more meat on their bones. So with that, let's move to Robotnik. Fun fact about the Sonic movies is that Jim Carrey actually retired after the second one and said he'd only come back if the script was good enough. And having seen this movie, I'd say he made the right choice. Not only is Robotnik at his funniest here, but he's actually a much more active player in the story, as he's now actively going after the same MacGuffin as Sonic and the others, rather than simply following behind and then snatching it out from under them once they've done all the hard work. Like I said with Agent Stone, it definitely helps that Robotnik is given an actual team that follows him around this time, instead of them just being guys in the chair, so he can really bounce off of them, especially Gerald. Now, I'll admit, I was definitely a bit put off by Gerald's personality at first, especially considering how somber he is in the games, but I think it makes sense for what they're doing here, as Gerald is basically playing into all of Robotnik's eccentricities in order to take advantage of him, which I would definitely say is an interesting choice for the character compared to the games. In the games, Gerald wasn't necessarily a vengeful or manipulative person, but more so angry about how Gunn basically screwed him over 50 years prior. Did I mention he was executed via firing squad? Yeah, him being here in general is just a big swing. And while I am a bit tentative about his characterization, I do think it was a smart idea to give Robotnik someone that could match his energy, especially since Gerald's plan is way more extreme. You see, back 50 years ago, Gerald was actually performing experiments on Shadow through Gunn's supervision. However, when Gunn got cold feet about the whole thing, Gerald tried to escape with Shadow along with his own granddaughter, Maria. However, they failed and Maria was killed. And while Shadow was basically put into cryosleep for 50 years, Gerald did not get that luxury, as he was kept alive the entire time and was forced to build the Eclipse Cannon for Gunn. So, as his revenge, Gerald not only plans to wipe out all of humanity, but also kill himself in the process, seeing that he has nothing to live for. And when Robotnik points out the fact that Gerald has been working with his grandson the entire time, Gerald basically brushes him off, saying that he's no Maria, and points out the fact that literally no one on Earth loves Robotnik. Which is especially sad when you consider the fact that he's been giving Agent Stone the cold shoulder the whole time, even when he tried to warn him about Gerald, which in turn encourages Robotnik to rebel against him, and then sacrifice himself when the Eclipse Cannon is set to explode, with his final words being nothing but praise for Agent Stone's loyalty to him despite everything, showing us that, incredibly deep down, he did still care for him. Admittedly though, you can't talk about redemption arcs without talking about Shadow. Basically, on the list of things that you needed to get right for Sonic Movie 3, Shadow was easily the highest priority. Sonic Adventure 2, without a doubt, is the most beloved Sonic story, not only for its maturity, but just how crazy the whole thing is willing to get, with Shadow being the centerpiece for all of it. And honestly, they nailed it. Shadow is easily the best character in the movie, and in the translation from game to film, the most accurate adaptation of a Sonic character so far. He's definitely a bit more moody than his game counterpart, but I'm willing to excuse it because of what he's been through. Now, seeing that we've basically gone over Shadow's backstory in the movies, let's take a look at his backstory in the games and see how it compares. Where Shadow in the movies is an alien, consistent with Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles, Shadow in the games was actually created by Gerald, not only as the ultimate life form, but in an attempt to cure diseases, specifically a terminal illness that Maria had. Just like the movies, Gunn became scared of the power Shadow possessed, and so they raided the lab he was being tested in, killing all the scientists, and in turn Maria, who helped Shadow to escape. Though, like before, he'd wind up being asleep for 50 years, with Gerald swearing revenge before he was executed. Vengeance that Shadow carried out 50 years later, with the help of Rouge the Bat and Gerald's grandson, Dr. Eggman, or Robotnik, Sonic as you know him. Now, with those comparisons aside, I'm going to make a case for something that I'm pretty sure I'm not the minority on. That being that I think Sonic Movie 3 did a better job with Shadow's origin compared to Sonic Adventure 2. And that's not me bashing Sonic Adventure 2. In fact, I think knowing what happens in Sonic Adventure 2 makes this story a lot more impactful, because Sonic 3 builds upon it. In the games, we know that Maria loved life, and that she would have wanted to see the world and everything it had to offer had her condition been cured. And so Maria's death really stings because she'll never get to experience any of it. Which brings us to Sonic 3, which takes this aspect and really expands upon it, specifically Shadow and Maria's dynamic. The first piece of concept art ever created for the movie was this one here, showcasing Shadow and Maria seemingly meeting for the first time. And I think it does a really good job of highlighting the differences in their dynamic here. As in the movie, Maria was one of the only people who genuinely saw Shadow as just a friend or a living being, rather than an alien experiment. Maria would watch movies with Shadow, she'd get Shadow to dance with her, and she'd even sneak into the labs where Shadow was being tested to take him out to play. Maria even tries to reassure Shadow that he doesn't have to be defined by the labels that others place on him as a result of him being an alien. And so knowing all this and seeing just how happy Shadow was makes her death all the more crushing, especially since, unlike in the games, Maria wasn't able to save Shadow. And just like the games, Shadow fails to save Maria, which is an event that he continuously replays in his head for the next 50 years, and leads to him seeing nothing but red when he finally does escape containment. Luckily though, Shadow does have someone who can help him steer away from this dark path, which brings me to his dynamic with Sonic. As weird as his origins are in the movies, one of the first connections I made between the movies and games was how similar Sonic's origin is to Shadow's, with both characters losing loved ones as a result of their ostracization from the rest of the world. Something that the movie itself actually picks up on pretty quickly, specifically when Tom and Sonic are looking through Sonic's old cave, and Tom marvels at how he managed to survive for 10 years like this. One of the things he points out is the fact that Sonic, despite all his struggles and suffering, didn't let the experiences change who he was. Which is obviously meant to be foreshadowing for what happens, but something I appreciate is that it makes Sonic's attempts to reach out to Shadow feel a lot more genuine, since he actually can relate. At the same time, something I really appreciate is that Sonic and Shadow's origins aren't exactly the same. Yeah, Sonic lost a parental figure in his life, but he was given a chance to distance himself from those experiences, where Shadow was forced to sit with everything, since he failed to escape. And as a result, Sonic can relate, but he can't fully understand. Though this quickly changes when Shadow almost kills Tom, and in turn sets Sonic on a warpath against him, with him barely pulling himself back from crossing the line at the last minute, citing the fact that there are no winners in revenge, which leads Shadow to realize just how much damage he's done and will potentially do if he continues down this path, straight up saying that this is all his fault, with him then helping Sonic to defeat Gerald's forces and stop the Eclipse Cannon. But rewinding it a bit, something I want to talk about is how Shadow's shift is handled. After he almost kills Tom, Sonic comes running in to check on him, and for a split second, Shadow literally sees himself in Sonic, to the point that he has a flashback to when him and Gerald were cradling Maria's dead body. And later, on the Eclipse Cannon, Shadow thinks again as he contemplates what's happened, wondering if he's actually doing the right thing, and this is what Maria would have wanted. And what I love is the deeper meaning to all of this. Shadow had everything that was near and dear to him taken away from him in a moment's notice, and now he's about to do the same thing, but on a much larger scale. More specifically, I think the scene with Sonic and Tom is what put this in perspective to Shadow, and in turn makes it easier for Sonic to get through to Shadow once the time is right. Which brings me to what is arguably my favorite change in the movies, that being Shadow's sacrifice. In the games, when Sonic and Shadow are making their final effort to stop the Eclipse Cannon, Shadow actually runs out of chaos energy, which leads to him plummeting to Earth, presumably dead, with his final words being about how this is what Maria would have wanted, bringing his redemption full circle. However, in the movies, it's actually Sonic who runs out of energy first, and this time it's before the job is completed, which leads to Shadow and Robotnik having to make the ultimate sacrifice as they get the Eclipse Cannon away, with Shadow taking one last trip down memory lane before the blast. And just like Shadow's backstory, what I love is that it doesn't simply do a better job, it elevates it. The original has Shadow using the last of his strength to make an attempt to do the right thing, whereas in this one, doing the right thing is placed firmly in Shadow's hands, as he's the only one who can do it, which makes his atonement feel that much more powerful since he actually succeeded this time. And it gives Knuckles his big moment that I had hinted at earlier, as when Sonic is plummeting to Earth, Tails attempts to dive down to grab him. However, due to the speed at which they're entering the atmosphere, he also passes out, and Knuckles has to dive down to save them both. The reason this is impactful being that when Sonic was trying to get revenge on Shadow, he demanded that Knuckles tell him where the Master Emerald is in order to use it. And had Shadow not been converted to the good guy's side, this would have definitely jeopardized the whole mission. And yet, here Tails and Knuckles are, diving down, risking their lives to save Sonic anyways. With Sonic even acknowledging this as the three embrace, learning not to take his family for granted. But with that, I'd say we're done with the characters in this movie. Honestly, I think this one is easily the best when it comes to the character work. From the sexual tension between Sonic and Shadow, to all the characters and dynamics that were added that weren't even in the games initially. I think Sonic 3 easily cracked the code when it came to these versions of the characters, which is a shame because I have a feeling it'll be a while before we see any of these again. And some of these will probably be seen for the last time. Which brings me to my final verdict. Of the three movies, I think that Sonic 3 is probably the best when it comes to adapting the source material. Sonic 1 was an adaptation in name only, as it is pretty much just its own thing for most of it, save for the fact that Sonic's the main character. Sonic 2 adapts more stuff from the games, specifically Sonic 2 and 3, but at the same time, they mostly do the larger strokes, things like the Master Emerald or the giant robot fight at the end, and some of the stuff just so happens to be references to things. Whereas Sonic 3 feels like the perfect middle ground. It's the perfect mix between an adaptation of the source material while also doing a lot of its own things. To show you what I mean, let me compare the story of the movie to the story of the game. In the game, Eggman's the one who releases Shadow after breaking out of prison, whereas in the movie, it's Gerald. Also, where the movie has both teams of characters sticking together for the whole time, the game has it so that Sonic and the others are going on their own smaller journeys, while also dealing with the overarching threat. You've got Sonic trying to clear his name after Shadow frames him for a series of crimes, which leads to him being arrested by the government. Knuckles is trying to find all the shards of the Master Emerald, while Tails and Amy are trying to help Sonic clear his name while figuring out what's actually going on. Then you have Eggman, who's trying to unlock the Doomsday weapon his grandfather built. Shadow is trying to get revenge on humanity for what happened to Maria. Rouge is revealed to be a double agent working for Gun, but is still an antagonist because she's trying to grab the Master Emerald for her own personal gain. And then you have the reveal that Gerald was planning to destroy all of humanity and manipulate Shadow's memories so that he could enact the plan, which involved activating the Bio Lizard, which was the original Ultimate Life Form, and you're probably having trouble keeping up. But don't worry, that's kind of the point. You see, I'm not trying to say that Sonic Adventure 2 has a bad or convoluted story, but rather that it's a massive story with a lot of moving parts. And so I can understand why you'd need to trim the fat from that. It's different from a video game, where you not only get to play as these characters, but in general get to spend more time as them, and as a result you get a better idea for how everything works. Whereas the story in a movie needs to be much more straightforward and concise. Now, you're probably wondering, but Al, wasn't Avengers Infinity War a massive movie that had several different characters from the MCU and multiple moving parts? Well, yes, but as a loophole to that statement, I'd like to point out the fact that in Avengers Infinity War, almost everyone is working towards the same goal, that being defeating Thanos, except for Thanos himself. There is not a single subplot in that movie that doesn't involve a character coming up with a way to take out Thanos. And when we aren't focusing on that, we're focusing on Thanos working towards the goal that everyone is trying to stop. Sonic 3 does the same thing, and while it does have to make some unfortunate omissions, I think the stuff that they supplement it with is just as interesting. Not to mention that it probably won't be too long before we get to see some of these dropped ideas introduced. Now, much like the Venom movies, I don't think Sonic is going to make it to the Trilogy Awards this year. Not because they're bad, but because I feel that it's pretty obvious who the winners here are. So, I guess all we can hope for now is that Sonic 4 doesn't mess it all up. Thank you guys for watching, and for your patience with this one. Don't worry, this won't be the only Sonic content I produce this year. But focusing more on the movies, I want you to tell me down in the comments section, what did you like or dislike about Sonic 3, and what game would you want them to adapt in a later movie? Also, as a bonus question, tell me what you think is going to happen in Sonic 4. As always, be sure to like, share, and subscribe today to join the A-list. And have a great day. Bye!